Hello and welcome to section 1.3 and 1.4, where we will be discussing addition and subtraction of real numbers. The best way to remember addition is that addition always moves us to the right on the number line, and subtraction always moves us to the left on the number line. Let me bring up a virtual number line and show you what that means. So here's a real number line, and notice that addition, one way to think of addition, for example, if I had the number 3 and I wanted to add 5 to that, is movement on the number line. We would move right 3 units and then move right 5 more units because we're adding the numbers together. We can also think of this with negative numbers. If I wanted to take the number 7 and add the number -4, well, that's the same as subtraction. Whenever you see a plus and a negative together in a problem, that just means subtraction. In fact, you can take the plus out and just leave a subtraction sign there. Remember, subtraction moves us to the left. So we started at 7, and then -4 moves us to the left. This can get kind of complicated when we start using multiple negatives. For example, the number -4 minus the number -3 actually moves us even farther to the left. We start at -4 and then move 3 more units to the left because it's negative. Again, when a plus and a minus are together, you can just write that as one negative. Good. So let's take a look at one more. For example, if I had -8 and I wanted to add 4 to that, so notice the -8 moves us to the left 8, and then the +4 moves us back to the right 4 units. So we would do -8 plus 4 gets us -4. Let's take a look at when subtracting. So when subtracting, if I had 4 minus 2, well, this is an easy problem here. We go to the right 4, and then we subtract 2, which moves us back to the left 2 units to give us 2. Now, what happens when we subtract a negative number? When we go 4 minus a -5, notice that we have a double negative here. And whenever you have a double negative, you should turn that sign, both those signs, into plus. So when there's a plus and a minus, you're going to leave that as minus. When there is a minus, or an opposite of an opposite, that's plus. So we went 4 units to the right, and then went an additional 5 units to the right to get 9. 4 minus a -5 is +9. And you, again, sometimes can write the minus as a positive. We can go -7 minus a -5. So take a look at this. So I've got -7, so I start going to the left 7 units. That's where I'm going to start. And then I do minus a -5. Again, a minus a negative is going to be a positive. And so that's going to move us back to the right 5 units, leaving us with an answer of -2. Now this applet here there is a link to this if you'd like to play around with it yourself and drag these back and forth kind of to see what happens as things move to the left and right. Notice here -7 minus 6 makes us more negative. We start at -7 and then we go 6 more units to the left. Remember, minus moves us left, addition moves us plus. This applet's available to you to play around with to kind of get an idea of how addition and subtraction of integers moves us up and down, or left and right, on the number line. So let's take a look at these 3 examples here. Here I have, on this first one, -17 minus 25. So I would, if I were doing this in my head or on a piece of paper, thinking of it moving left and right, this would be start at -17. So go to the left 17 and then go left 25 more. In that situation, because they're both left, I would add the numbers together, the absolute value of the numbers, 17 plus 25, which would get me 42. And because I was moving to the left, it would be -42. Here I'm starting on this next one, -3. I start at the left, but then I have a negative and a negative. So remember, 2 negatives together makes it positive. So I would actually change these signs, and I'd say, okay, well, this is -3 to the left, and here we have a +5. Well, that moves us to the right. So if I went -3 left and then 5 to the right, well, that would get me 2 to the right. So my answer there would be +2. On the next one here I'm 7 units to the left plus 2 more units going to the left. That's going to be -9. That one looked just like the first one. Now you can use a calculator to do this as well. So there's no shame in using a calculator. Let's get familiar with our calculators. You should be able to identify the negative button. Please understand that the negative button is different than the subtraction button. They're different. You can even see that they're different in size. You have to be aware of that, or your calculator is not going to understand which one you're doing. So please remember to know the difference between your negative button and your subtraction button. So let's go ahead and type these in. If I were to do this first problem here, I'd go -17 plus a -25. We'd push the enter button and we get our answer. Okay. On this other one, it was -3 minus a -5. So I would do -3 minus a -5. I push the enter button and I get 2. On this next one here, we would just do -7 plus a -2, which gets us -9. Remember that you can use a calculator to do addition and subtraction of negative numbers, so negative and positive numbers. Okay, let's give you some to work on here for your video notebook. Okay, so here are 6 problems for you to work on. Take out your video notebook and go ahead and work on adding and subtracting these real numbers. Feel free to use your calculator. Make sure that you check your answers at the end here. Every calculator works a little different, so you may have to play around with it. If you're not feeling very comfortable with your calculator, make sure to stop by the tutor center, either online or in person, so that they can help you get an idea of what buttons to push for your calculator. You are also free to do these by hand if you'd like, to make sure that you're doing them right. Go ahead and pause the video now and push the play button when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, hopefully you've tried these problems now and are ready to proceed. Again, you can use your calculator to do these problems if you'd like. For this first one, you just type in -4 plus 8 and you get 4. On the next one, it would be 8 minus a -10. You get 18. Again, here's an example of where you could go wrong. If you typed in 8 and used a minus instead of a negative, look what's going to happen. The calculator is going to say error. Sometimes it'll give you an answer and it will be wrong. So don't mix up the negatives and the subtractions. It was the correct answer on the correct way to type that in would be 8 minus a -10. Okay, good. Let's continue. The next one was -3 plus a -4, which gets me -7. For these ones over here, we would do -3/4. Remember that you can use the ABC button in your calculator to represent fractions. -2/3. We get -17/12. After that, we have -1.5 minus a -3.5, which gets us 2. Again, you can think of this as moving left and right. If I were to take this problem, I would start left, -1.5. A double negative means that these are plus, which means I'm actually moving right. So I would do 3.5 minus 1.5 because it's moving left to find out how far right I move over. Notice that the right number is bigger, and so my answer is going to be positive or right if you're thinking of moving left and right. On the last one here, we would do 4/18 minus 5/6, and we would get our answer of -11/18. And so that's how we would do those 6 problems. Again, that's using addition and subtraction of rational numbers. And that is our lesson for the day. There are some word problems that you can use in this. For example, one word problem could include So here's a word problem that consists of elevation. For example, Mount McKinley is the highest point in North America. Its altitude is 20,328 feet. And the lowest point, anybody know? You bet. Death Valley in California, which is about 200 feet below zero. So the question is if you traveled from Death Valley all the way to the top of Mount McKinley, what is the difference or the change in altitude? So again, the idea there is difference. The word difference means subtraction. And so the problem that we have here to set up is 20,328 feet minus, because we're doing the difference. And then we have Death Valley, which is 200 feet below sea level. And so we would need to mark that as a negative because it's negative 200 feet because it's below that sea level. And so as we work that out, that would be then how we get the answer for the difference in the change of altitude. We would do minus a negative 200. This often also happens in temperature because you can have temperatures that are above zero and temperatures that are negative. And there's other examples in the real world where this appears. And so for this answer, we would say that the difference in altitude is 20,528. So here's an example for you. Another place where we see positive and negative numbers is in football. You bet. You can have positive yardage and negative yardage. Let's say on the first attempt, a team runs and gets an 8-yard gain. And then on the second opportunity, the second down, that team gets sacked and loses 12 yards. A 12-yard loss. Then on third down, on the third opportunity, they do a pass and get a 7-yard gain. And then on fourth down, they decide to go for it and get another 6-yard gain. The question is, what would be the total yards gained or loss in these four plays? Go ahead and pause the video, give this a try, make sure that you can get the positive and the negatives all worked out, and then resume the video when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, how'd you do? This one's not too complicated. You can simply add the numbers together. We're going to use gain to be positive numbers, and then add a negative 12-yard loss because they lost 12 yards. You could also just put subtraction if you wanted to. You don't have to put plus and negative. I could have just done 8 minus 12 plus 7 plus 6. Remember, plus and negative, whenever we do plus and negative, that's the same thing as subtraction. So don't let plus and negative mess you up. Plus and negative is the same thing as a subtraction. Plus a negative number is subtraction. And minus a negative number is addition, because those two signs will cancel out. Okay, well, thanks for joining us in this lesson. We will see you in the next. Hello and welcome to section 1.5 and 1.6, where we will be talking about multiplication and division of real numbers. We just finished addition and subtraction, and so now we're moving on to the next part. Before we get started, we hope that you had a chance to watch the study skills video. That was there's a link right above it. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure to pause this video and watch it. It's kind of funny, a little Darth Vader, a little Star Wars in there, but there's a real important study skill that I wanted to express, and that is that we make sure that we control our technology use. Technology is a great thing. It is doing amazing things in our world. It's great for the gospel. It's great. It makes life simpler, but you also need to realize that it can be a distraction. And so as you watch these videos, you really want to make sure you're free of distractions. It's a good idea to turn that cell phone off or put it into a different room as you watch this video, and make sure you can dedicate your full attention to these videos. Elder M. Russell Ballard said, "Remember, brothers and sisters, any kind of addiction is to surrender to something, thus relinquishing agency and becoming dependent. Texting on cell phones can be an addiction, causing the important interpersonal human communication to be lost. So take action. Put your cell phone away during class and start taking steps to let your cell phone be productive and not destructive. We just would hate that you miss out on some of the learning opportunities because of technology. That includes Facebook and other things. Make sure to shut those windows down. Pay attention here. This video is not that long, but we want to make sure you master these concepts so you can be successful in this math class and in future math classes as well. With that said, let's get started. So multiplication, we'll start there first. Multiplication of real numbers is just like what you've always learned. When we take a positive number times a positive number, we're going to get a positive number. So 5 times 7 is 35. However, if we multiply a negative number times a positive number, we get a negative number. And that is true if you, and then if we multiply two negatives together, let's say we had negative 5 times negative 4, a negative times a negative is a positive number. And so this is true. So if you have an even amount of negative numbers, it's going to be positive. If you have an odd amount of negative numbers that you're multiplying together, it's going to be odd. So take a look at this one. Negative 7 times negative 2 times negative 5. Well, that answer is going to be negative. And we would just multiply those together. So 7 times 2 is 14 times 5 is 70. Negative 70. You can do these on your calculator as well. If you pull up your calculator, you have a negative button. Make sure you can identify the negative button. The negative button is different than the subtraction button. Be careful, because if you try to use a subtraction button for a negative, if I want to do like negative 7 times 3, and I push the enter button, oh, that time it actually worked. Sometimes it will not work, and so you really want to make sure that you're using your negative button to make sure you do these. Negative 3 times 4, and our answer comes out negative. Another way to express multiplication is using exponents. For example, if I have the number 5 squared, that just is a simple way to write 5 times 5, which we know is 25. It's important to remember, though, that this can get a little tricky when it deals with negatives. If I put in here negative 3 squared, well, that means negative 3 times negative 3. And so negative 3 times negative 3 we know is 9. If you do this in your calculator, you can find some issues. For example, watch. If I type in negative 3 and then I put in squared here, to do exponents in your calculator, you use a caret button. Some of you may not have this caret button. It may also look like this, y to the x. This button may be how you do exponents in your calculator, one of these two buttons. So if I type this in, and I type in negative 3 squared, I push the enter button, notice that it comes out as negative 9. Well, that's weird, because when I just did the problem over here, that's not what I got. Negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3. That's a negative times a negative. And so therefore our answer is positive 9. So be aware, if there are parentheses, you need to type those in. You need to type those into your calculator. So I would go parenthesis, parenthesis, negative 3, close parenthesis, squared. Oh, some of you may also have a squared button that you can push. And notice that way we get the answer correct. It's very important that if there are parentheses, you remember that everything inside the parentheses is being squared. That's different than if we had the problem negative 3 squared. Notice this doesn't have parentheses, so the negative is not being squared. The equivalent of this is basically negative times 3 times 3. And in that situation, our answer will be negative 9. So, moral of the story is, if the negative is inside the parentheses, then you do include that in the squaring process. If there are no parentheses, then this negative is not being squared and is going to be just tacked on at the end of your answer. Okay, so it's time for you to get some practice. Take out your video notebook. Here's 5 problems we'd like you to work on. Go ahead and pause this video now and push the play button when you're ready to check your answers. Good luck! Okay, so hopefully by now you've worked on these problems. I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator here to work on these. We would type in 15 times a negative 8 you should have got negative 120 for that answer. We'll write that in here. Negative 120. For the next one, remember to do fractions. You can use this fraction button on your calculator. So negative 5/8 times negative 2/5, and we get 1/4. Or you could just, if you did this by hand, you can do it by hand as well. You'd cancel the 5s. This would leave you with a 1 and a 1. You can cancel the 2s. That leaves you a 1 and a 4. The answer would be 1/4. Notice that the answer is positive because the two negatives cancel out. Negative times a negative is a positive. Here we've got fractions. I'm going to go ahead and do that in the calculator. It would be 4/5 times negative 2/3 times negative 15/7 times 1/2. And we get 4/7. We can check that answer to make sure that the positives and negatives were right. We had a positive, then a negative, then a negative, and a positive. So two negatives makes a positive, so we're good there. On this next part here, we're going to plug the 2 in for x. We plug the 2 in, and I get negative 3 times 2, parentheses, squared. We're going to use order of operations, which means we need to do the parentheses first. So I get negative 6 in parentheses, and so I need to square negative 6. The answer there is 36. Remember, that becomes positive. If you did that in your calculator, it would be negative 6 squared, but you need to use parentheses. Negative 6 squared, and we get 36. Okay, be careful. The negative is inside the parentheses, and so therefore it does get squared. It's negative 6 times negative 6. On this one, we plug the 2 in, and I get negative 3 times 2 squared. Now I follow order of operations. I do exponents first. Notice there's no parentheses here. So it would be negative 3 times 4. The answer to this one is negative 12. Okay, how'd you do? Make sure to correct your video notebook if you missed a couple. And let's move on to the next section. Okay, so let's talk about division. Division is pretty much the same way. Remember that if we're dividing a positive by a positive, it comes out positive. If we're dividing a positive by a negative, then it becomes negative. And if we have two negatives, so a negative divided by a negative, we get a positive. So it's the same as multiplication for signs. Do be aware of that. A couple other things you're going to want to know is that any number, 0 divided by any number, so if I had 0 divided by 10, or 0 divided by 27, or 0 divided by 56, that's always going to be 0. But the opposite is not true. 10 divided by 0, or 11 divided by 0, or negative 31 divided by 0. These results are undefined. Undefined. We do not know what that is. In fact, there's a big discussion on when you divide by 0, what that actually is. But we cannot divide by 0. In fact, if you try to do that in your calculator is going to get mad at you. If I did 9 divided by 0, oh, I got an error. So just remember, you can, in fact, I had a calculus teacher that would always go, never divide by 0, with a really evil voice. So just remember that you can't divide any numbers by 0, or the answer is that it's undefined or not defined. Another topic that we want to talk about when it comes to division is to talk about reciprocals. The reciprocal of a number is really important to be able to find. For example, if I had the number 1, actually let's go with 2/3. The reciprocal of a number is it's flipped. It's its multiplicative inverse. In other words, you flip the number. So the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. We would just flip those values. The reciprocal of 5, you could think of 5 as being 5/1. And so the reciprocal of 5/1 is 1/5. Or the reciprocal of negative 7/3, well, you just flip it, would be negative 3/7. Reciprocals are really important because when we find a reciprocal, we know that when you multiply those numbers together, they'll be the same. For example, if I took 3/5 and multiplied it by its reciprocal, which is 5/3, well, if you multiply it across, we would get 15/15, which is 1. Anytime you multiply a number by its reciprocal, you will get 1. So do be aware of that. So those are how we do reciprocals. Okay, so it's your turn to work on some of these problems here. What we'd like you to do, I've written up 6 problems. Take out your video notebook and give these 6 problems a try. Go ahead and pause the video. When you're ready to see the answers, go ahead and resume and push the play button. Good luck working with division. Okay, how'd you do? Let's find out. So negative 200 divided by 8. Negative 200 divided by 8. Again, we could use our calculator for this if we'd like. I would go negative 200 divided by 8 and push the enter button. We get negative 25. Another way you could have actually done this, not that you had to, and maybe some of you did, is type in this as a fraction. It looks a lot like a fraction. Division and fractions are basically the same thing. And so you could have typed it in as a fraction as well, when you would have gotten the same answer. 0 divided by 17, remember that 0 divided by anything is 0. And negative 14 divided by 0, well, that's undefined. Don't forget that. If you type those into your calculator, you would have got those answers. 0 divided by 17 and negative 14 divided by 0. Remember, you never divide by 0. The reciprocal of 3/7. The reciprocal of 3/7, you just flip it. It would be 7/3. Here is a division problem. To do that, I'm going to move this over. I would do 7/8 divided by negative 1/2. Push the enter button. We get negative 7/4. If you were doing that by hand, you would have to switch the division to multiplication. So we would do 7/8 times the reciprocal. Remember, when dealing with fractions and division, you flip and multiply. So it would be times the reciprocal, which would be 2 over 1 with a negative. The 2 and the 8 would simplify. You'd get 1 here, you get 4 here, and so negative 7/4 would be your answer if you did that by hand. On this last one, that may look a little confusing. It's a fraction divided by a fraction. It basically is the same as this, except we've got one big line, and so we are doing division here. And so we would do negative 13/20 divided by negative 2/5. And we get the answer of 13 over 8. You could have done flip and multiplication as well there. You would have done 13/20 times a negative 5/2. Remember, when dividing fractions, we flip and multiply. So, or reciprocate is the real word. Use the reciprocal. And then simplify. You would get the same answer. Okay, wonderful. Well, that is the lesson. For today, sections 1.5 and 1.6. Thanks for watching. You may proceed to the online assignment. If you need any help with these topics, make sure to stop by and discuss it with a tutor. They'd love to help at the Tutor Center.